A few videos ago, I showed you this montage I made for my video Easy Camera Tracking with After Effects. And many of you commented that you wanted to see a full video tutorial about how I made this animation. So in this video I'm gonna introduce you to the wonderful, spectacular, magical and very PC demanding world of simulations in Blender. Personally, I consider myself as a beginner in the subject. I'm just starting learning about particle sims, water sims, fire sims, smoke sims, and rigid body simulations, which is the subject of this video. Before we start, I need to remind you that this is considered the second part of my previous video about camera tracking, where we analyze and export the camera movement of the original footage into Blender, and we will use this to make the environment of the simulations. So I highly recommend you to check out that video before this one. But if you're only interested about making these simulations, let's jump right into Blender. Okay guys, here I have opened the original project, which I used to make these simulations. I modeled the entire environment based on the original video, so that the elevator, floor, and column measures match the best as possible. For now, what I want to emphasize here is that I want you to see that the only thing I have animated by hand are the elevator doors. I want you to remember this information for later. Having taken a quick look at the scene, let's create a new one from scratch to explain step by step how I created this simulation. First, we're gonna create an icosphere and a plane. We're gonna apply the simulation physics to the sphere, and the plane will be the surface which the sphere will collide and not falling down to the void. We're gonna multiply this sphere by adding an array modifier in the right panel, with a count of 5 and giving it a small separation between spheres. Now we're gonna create another modifier on the same object, with the same distance amount, only instead of multiplying it along the x-axis, we're gonna change it to the y-axis. And finally, we're gonna create another array modifier to clone once again these spheres along the z-axis to form a cube of spheres. Now these spheres are actually just instances of the original sphere and don't have independent properties. So for example, if I modify the original sphere, all the other spheres will be modified in the same way. So, to materialize these instances, let's click on the arrow in the modifier panel and hit the apply option to all three modifiers. And as you can see, now all the spheres became a single solid object. So let's see what happens if we give physical properties to all these spheres. Go to the Physics tab and click on the rigid body option. This will activate the physics for this object, and things like gravity, collisions, and other forces that we want to add will affect these spheres. Going over these basic options for now, we just leave it as it is. In the same way, we will give rigid body properties to the plane below, so this way the sphere can collide with the plane. The only difference that this one will have is that we're gonna uncheck the dynamic option for the floor, because we don't want any gravity or force effect to the floor. So now for our first test, we'll set the timeline to 30 frames. And now we'll press the spacebar to run the animation in real time. As you can see, this thing luckily moved. But don't worry, because we still have to make a few tweaks to make each sphere independent of the rest. First, we have to separate each of these spheres individually. Pressing tab, we enter to the editing mode, where we can model and modify the objects in the scene. So, to separate every individual sphere and not getting old in the process, we will have to press A key to select all the faces in the model. Then, pressing the P key, we will open the separation options. And finally, each of these options will allow us to individualize the objects by selected faces, by materials, and the third one by loose parts. And this last one is the one that we want to use. And as you can see on the right panel, now 100 new icospheres have been created in our collection. And each one of these already has the rigid body options applied, because all the properties of the original model have been copied. So let's do another test and let's see how well the simulation goes. We'll press the spacebar and... Yay, we did it! Or not. For an untrained eye, this simulation would be more than enough. But if we are a little more detailed, we will see that the physics are not quite correct. That's because if we analyze the movement of the balls, they seem to have a tendency to fall to the left side, and you could say, but it doesn't matter, you can hardly notice it. Believe me, it matters a lot. It matters even more if we are simulating large quantity of objects. In the elevator project, I had a really hard time because every time I run the simulation, the whole bunch of spheres explode themselves every single time and made my simulation useless just because this little detail. If we select any of the spheres, we can notice that there's a small detail that every single sphere share each other. And this is the origin point. As you can see in the animation, this origin point tends to move in a strange way below the spheres. This very small detail completely affects the behavior of the sphere's physics. And this is a detail that we can fix very easily by selecting all the spheres from the panel on the right side. Now we click on the Object tab and click on Origin to Center of Mass. In this case, we should use the Volume option. And when you click it, you will see that the origin points are distributed evenly to the center of their respective sphere. So now if we press play, we will see that the simulation produced looks much accurate. There's no more strange rotations, and the spheres spread on an expected way. Now let's say that you want to modify some parameters of the simulations, for example reducing the weight, reduce the friction, and increase the bounciness. But then now you'll have to change every parameter of every single sphere, and that will take you forever. Well, let me tell you that there's a simple solution for that problem. We'll select all the spheres pressing Shift, and then we'll select the first sphere that we modified the parameters, but this time pressing Ctrl instead of Shift. And you'll see that it becomes more highlighted than the rest. So now we'll go to the Object tab, look for the Rigid Body option, and select Copy from Active option. That way the rest of the spheres will copy the parameters of the first sphere. With this simple solution, we can see that each and every sphere share the properties of the first sphere that we modified before. We'll see that the behavior and physics of all the spheres now look as it should, based on the setting changes we did before. Now let's do a little experiment. Let's add an object to shake a little bit up this scene. I just modeled this triangle which I animated going through the spheres, but right now, as you can see, the spheres are not interacting with this object. That's because we have to add collision properties with the Rigid Body option. The only option that we will change is deactivating the dynamic options and activate the animate option. We will see that now the triangle affects the physics of the spheres. And I'm showing you this because this triangle will represent the doors of the elevator. We must configure them the same way as a non-dynamic object, an animated object, and in this case we change the collision type to a cube. Now, based on the video that we have in the background, and with the camera that we have imported from After Effects, we have to model the rest of the environment, such as the floor, walls, elevator, and the column. And to each model, we have to add the rigid model properties. The only difference with the previous colliders and objects is that both elevator and the floor are irregular objects. Those objects don't qualify as cubes, spheres, or another default collision in the rigid body options. So we have to select the mesh type option. This way the rigid body respects the complete model of our elevator no matter how irregular it is. Here I must warn you that you have to be really careful with this option, because like in a real engine, the more dense and detailed your mesh is, your PC performance could be affected and the simulation times could be longer. So if you have a dense and detailed mesh, it's better to use one of the default colliders options, which best matches to your object. It all depends of your mesh, which your simulations are going to interact. So that's basically all that you need to know about simulations. But wait, don't go yet! I have a couple more tips for you that could be really helpful when building your scenes. Let me ask you something. How will you place the materials and colors on our spheres in our scene? If you answer that you will color them one by one, well, let me save your life by showing you this trick. With only one material, we can randomize the color of all these spheres. Let's select any sphere, create a new material, which we will rename as balls, And with this sphere selected, let's go to the Shading tab. If this is your first time entering to the Shading tab, basically this is where the materials are created and edited in Blender with different nodes that we can order as we want to get things as impressive as it's complex. But today we're gonna keep this explanation simple. The only thing that you should know is that in the principal BSDF node, we'll connect all the PBR maps to create a material. And this being connected to the material output, all the changes will be reflected on the panel above. So if we change the color, we will see that everything changed to the same color. This tells us that all the spheres are sharing the same material, but now we want each sphere to have a random color, and that is something that the Object Info node will take care of. By pressing the F3 key, it will open the search bar where we can type Object Info and click on this second option. Now, this node by itself doesn't do anything. It will only give us a random numerical value to each object. In order that these numbers are reflected in colors, we must add one of the best nodes that exists in Blender, which is the Color Ramp node. As you will see in the input and output points, we can intuit that we must connect yellow with yellow and gray with gray, which is correct with some exceptions. But right now, let's connect the color output of the color ramp to the base color. And as you can see, all the spheres became gray. That's because the material is mixing all the gradient nodes of the color ramp. And this mixture is affected if we move one of these values. The next thing we have to do is connecting the random option to the color ramp factor. And by doing this, we will see the magic. Mixing these two nodes, the Object Info node will give each sphere a value from the 0 to 1. For example, 0.01, 0.02, 0.03, and so on. And the color ramp assigns a color between black and white for the values from 0 to 1 respectively. Okay guys, we're halfway. Let's make this thing a little more interesting. With the plus button, let's add 2 more values to the line and rearrange them until they are as even as possible. We change the gradient type from linear to constant and change each color to blue, red, yellow, green, purple, etc. And as you can see guys, now each one of our spheres has a random color from the color ramp. And this way we can save us a lot of work creating 5 different materials and manually setting a different color sphere by sphere. Another little tip that I want to give you is that if you don't want your CPU to be calculating all the time this animation, and in the case that you already have the simulation as you want it, if we go to the Scene tab, here we will find the category of Rigid Body World, which by clicking it, we will deploy some extra options of the general simulation of the project. For now, the only thing that we will focus is on the cache option. Surely you have heard about the word cache before. In this case and in simple terms, this section is responsible for storing the information of the simulation that we are generating. And the interesting thing is that we can pre-bake the simulation before pressing play button, in order that our PC will not have to generate this simulation frame by frame in real time. This is very useful when you have a lot of simulated objects and the scene gets a little bit heavy to move in real time for our PC. So to do this, we must modify the necessary frames that we want to simulate, in this case from 1 to 30. And now we press the bake button. This could take a few minutes, so I would recommend you to be patient. Once finished, and if we press play, we will be able to see that the simulation runs smoothly since the beginning. And something interesting is that since we have the simulation already baked, we can delete all the colliders, but the spheres maintain the pre-baked movement. You have to be aware that any modifications of the physics or objects, you must delete the previous bake and click the bake button again to recalculate the simulations. And now finishing this video, the last trick I want to show you guys, it only works if you're rendering in Cycles, the main render engine of Blender. If we change the preview scene to render, we will see that all the objects and collisions became transparent except for the spheres. And how did I do that? Well, each object that the spheres interact with and I don't want it to render, we will set it as a shadow catcher object, which is not the same as simply hiding the object, because as its name suggests, we can still see the shadow casted by the spheres on these transparent surfaces. And this will help you a lot when compositing and editing the final video. And guys, that's how we end this video. I'm completely fascinated with the world of simulations, animations, and VFX in general. I'll be doing more experiments like this in the future, so don't forget to be subscribed to the channel to watch the whole process. Would you like to learn more about simulations, VFX, and Blender in general? I want to read all your comments down below. And now that you're down there, click the like button if you like this video or if you learned something new today. Subscribe to the channel and click the bell button so you don't miss any of the new videos we upload. You can support this channel sharing this video with the people that you think that this information could be helpful. Follow us on our social networks like Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, as well as on my Instagram, TikTok, and Spotify accounts. And guys, just remember that this is Exvia Studio Cinematica, and I'll see you on the next video.